Half of Canada sits in silence, vast, beautiful, and nearly abandoned. While cities like Toronto and Vancouver burst at the seams, entire provinces fade into quiet maps of decline. Jobs vanish, winters crush morale, and young people escape westward, leaving behind towns frozen in time. Yet these empty places hold stories of resilience, heartbreak, and survival. Why do millions flee while only a few remain? This is the hidden reality of Canada's forgotten half. Let's start. Part 1. Edge of the Map. 1. Newfoundland and Labrador, the beauty tax. At the far eastern edge of North America, where the continent dissolves into the Atlantic, lies a province both breathtaking and brutal. Newfoundland and Labrador is a paradox carved in rock and fog, stunning, defiant, and largely empty. Its population hovers around 520,000, spread thinly across coastal settlements that cling to cliffs like old paint on weathered wood. The interior is mostly untouched wilderness. Roads end abruptly where forests and fjords began. The isolation isn't poetic here, it's daily life. Yet even this emptiness carries a price few are willing to pay. For decades, the youth have been vanishing. Thousands head west each year, chasing better wages in Ontario's factories or Alberta's oil fields, leaving behind fishing villages that feel frozen in time and in demographics. In towns like Bonavista or Twillingate, school enrollment has fallen so sharply that some classrooms sit abandoned, chalkboards still half covered from the last lesson. What remains is a community of elders who remember when every harbor was alive with boats, every street with laughter. Now even the church bells echo longer. Time itself sounds louder here. The geography that defines Newfoundland and Labrador also traps it. Winters bring not just snow, but freezing rain that coats every surface in glass. Gale-force winds isolate entire towns for days. Ferries stop, flights ground, and supply lines break as easily as thin ice. For most residents, living here means planning around the weather, not as an inconvenience, but as a governing law. Heating oil prices can devour half a family's winter income, and with global inflation, the famous cheap homes of Newfoundland aren't cheap at all once the furnace starts humming. Beauty burns fuel fast. By the way, these videos take time and resources to create. Please subscribe to support the work. Let's continue. Economically, the province rides a seesaw of hope and heartbreak. Offshore oil once promised prosperity, but prices crashed, rigs closed, and towns that celebrated new jobs suddenly faced mass layoffs. The cod fisheries, once the province's lifeblood, have been automated or outsourced. Mining still thrives in the Labrador interior, yet those camps are so isolated that workers fly in and out, leaving no local economy behind. You can buy a house for less than a car in some towns, but what does a house mean if there's no work, no doctor, and no one left to visit you? You can buy a house, but can you build a life? Even the social fabric is stretched thin. Hospitals consolidate into distant regional centers, broadband access remains patchy, and in some outports it takes hours to reach an emergency room. Yet despite the hardships, many stay, not out of ignorance, but love. Newfoundland's music, humor, and kinship run deep. People here measure wealth not by income, but resilience. They joke about the fog, share food during storms, and turn tragedy into folklore. There's pride in enduring what others flee from. As one resident once said, "We may be broke, but we're never bored." Defiance becomes its own currency. Visually, the contrasts are haunting. In St. John's, Jelly Bean Row bursts with color, as if defying the gray Atlantic itself, while a few kilometers away, old fishing ports rot quietly beneath gulls' cries. A fisherman starts his day before dawn, pulling his nets from a sea older than memory, while at the edge of town, a school sits boarded up, its playground buried in snowdrifts. It's not just beauty and decay, it's beauty because of decay. Newfoundland and Labrador shows what happens when isolation is both a curse and a crown. Every postcard hides an invoice. 2. Prince Edward Island, the postcard that lies in winter. Across the Gulf of St. Lawrence, Prince Edward Island appears as the antidote, small, green, idyllic. It's the island of red cliffs, rolling fields, and Anne of Green Gables charm. With fewer than 200,000 residents, it's Canada's least populated province, but also one of its most photographed. From afar, it looks like a fairy tale made of sunsets and shorelines. Yet beneath the summer glow lies a different story, one written in unemployment figures, empty boardwalks, and long, isolating winters. The postcard doesn't show the wind. PEI's economy rests on three fragile pillars: tourism, potatoes, and fisheries. During summer, Cavendish Beach floods with vacationers, and cottages rent for more than city apartments. But when the season ends, the crowds vanish overnight. Hotels shutter, boardwalks echo, and entire neighborhoods seem asleep until May. Off-season unemployment remains among the highest in Atlantic Canada, and wages lag behind national averages by a wide margin. Islanders survive the winter months by saving every cent from their short, frantic summers. When the tide of tourists retreats, the real island appears. The pandemic briefly changed everything. Remote workers from Toronto and Montreal arrived with big salaries and bigger expectations, pushing house prices to record highs. For a moment, PEI looked like the new frontier: cheap land, safe streets, ocean views. But when the borders reopened and the novelty faded, reality returned. Those who had overpaid found themselves trapped with properties no one wanted in January. Prices cooled, listings lingered, and the bridge tolls and insurance costs quietly erased any savings. Affordability is a season, not a promise. Even infrastructure here carries a seasonal personality. The Confederation Bridge, linking the island to New Brunswick, closes during storms. Ferries pause in high winds. Healthcare access depends on geography. The closer you are to Charlottetown, the better your odds. Beyond the capital, doctor shortages and long drives for basic services are routine. Residents describe the winters as claustrophobic, not just from the cold, but from the silence, a psychological frost. In small towns, everyone knows everyone, but that comfort can quickly turn to pressure. In winter, the island feels smaller than its map. Yet PEI is not simply declining, it's transforming. Young farmers experiment with sustainable crops, artists reclaim empty barns as studios, and local councils promote renewable energy to break dependency on imported oil. Beneath the hardships, there's experimentation, small-scale innovation replacing industrial decline. But even that renewal carries a melancholy edge. Every success story comes with an asterisk about rising costs, aging populations, and shrinking school enrollments. Reinvention here always wrestles with retreat. From above, the island remains a masterpiece of color and calm. But look closer in January, and that serenity reveals itself as survival. Wind tears across frozen dunes, empty cottages rattle, and the silence becomes a character in itself. Islanders say you can hear the sea from anywhere, even miles inland, not because it's loud, but because there's nothing left to drown it out. That's the paradox of Prince Edward Island: beautiful, affordable, and quietly exhausting. Silence is never really silent. The Atlantic provinces are Canada's oldest settlements, yet they now stand at the edge of the national imagination, admired, romanticized, but increasingly abandoned. Cheap homes lure dreamers, winters send them running. And as we head inland, beyond the mist and into the forests and hills of the mainland, a new pattern emerges. Affordability doesn't vanish, it multiplies, but so do the reasons people still leave. Head inland and the postcard fades faster.
Part 2. Where affordability hides decay. 3. New Brunswick, the illusion of cheap. If Newfoundland teaches that beauty can bankrupt you, New Brunswick shows that affordability can deceive you. With just under 1 million residents, it's one of Canada's least populated provinces. A land of forests, rivers, and small towns where real estate listings look almost unbelievable. A family home for $280,000. A farmhouse for $160,000. Entire streets priced below what a Toronto apartment costs to rent in a month. But behind every bargain hides a calculation that never quite balances. Cheap isn't the same as sustainable. The province is split by geography and fortune. In the south, Moncton, St. John, and Fredericton hum with modest growth. Moncton thrives as a bilingual logistics and tech hub. Fredericton fills with civil servants and students. Yet drive north toward Miramichi, Bathurst, or Campbellton, and the scenery turns quiet. Mills stand empty beside pristine rivers, and downtowns fade into dollar stores and boarded facades. This north-south divide has become New Brunswick's defining scar. The jobs are gone, but the houses remain, waiting for buyers who rarely come. Even prosperity here has an accent. The industries that built the province, pulp, paper, and fishing, still exist, but mostly in name. Automation cut workforces by half. Younger generations never returned. The province shifted toward call centers, government offices, and small-scale manufacturing. But these sectors offer stability, not wealth. Median household income sits thousands below the national average, while essentials cost the same as in richer provinces. Property tax rates are among the highest in Canada, quietly inflating the cost of cheap homes. The bills keep growing while the wages stay still. For many, heating defines survival. New Brunswick winters bite hard, with long freezes and electricity bills that can reach $400 a month. The promise of affordability often evaporates with the frost. Healthcare has also grown fragile. Hospital emergency rooms have faced rolling closures due to staff shortages. For rural residents, a simple injury can mean a 2-hour drive. Meanwhile, St. John, the province's oldest city, battles a rise in drug-related petty crime, the kind that makes residents double-lock doors without talking about it. Cheapness carries hidden tolls. And yet, there's resilience in the quiet. Bilingualism runs deep, shaping a culture of adaptation. The Acadian heritage brings a pride of survival, communities that rebuild with grit rather than glamour. In small towns, entrepreneurship blooms in empty storefronts, microbreweries, bed and breakfasts, online craft shops. There's life here, but it hums below the radar, not loud enough to reverse the demographic decline. Every new business feels like a protest against gravity. Cheap lives on courage, not comfort. From above, the province looks lush and endless, forests rolling to the sea. But from within, it feels hollowed. It's not poverty so much as pause, towns waiting for a return that never comes. And that's the great illusion of cheap. A low price can hide the cost of emptiness, of distance, maintenance, and time. Affordability becomes a mirror for decline. 4. Nova Scotia. Halifax glows, back roads fade. If New Brunswick is a story of illusion, Nova Scotia is one of contrast. A province divided not by wealth but by direction. Nearly half of its million residents live in the Halifax Regional Municipality, a booming city, glowing with universities, tech startups, and waterfront apartments. The rest inhabit fishing towns, forest villages, and forgotten roads where the glow never reaches. The map is small, but the gap feels enormous. Halifax grows while the back roads fade. Halifax feels unstoppable. The city's economy spins around government institutions, the Royal Canadian Navy, and Dalhousie University. A flood of remote workers and retirees from Ontario have turned condos into bidding wars. Rents rose by over 20% in some neighborhoods between 2020 and 2023, while the dream of buying a home slipped away even for locals. But drive an hour out toward Yarmouth, Digby, or Guysborough, and the prices collapse. Houses under $200,000, acres for less than a year's city rent. Yet each listing comes with a quiet disclaimer: needs work. Cheapness here means distance from convenience. In the South Shore, the charm hides exhaustion. Tourists crowd Lunenburg's Pastel Harbor in summer, but by November, shops close, streets empty, and locals trade tourist chatter for the hum of oil furnaces. Rural schools merge, buses lengthen their routes, and healthcare stretches thinner every year. The provincial doctor shortage is so severe that in 2025, more than 150,000 residents were without a family physician. The government promises reforms, the people adapt. Winter taxes your soul. Storms have grown more violent too. Atlantic hurricanes now strike farther north, flooding basements and pushing insurance premiums up by double digits. In coastal hamlets, homeowners face a cruel irony. The cheapest homes are often the ones too close to the sea to insure. Even those who stay face rising costs for heating oil, building materials, and property upkeep. Every saving in the real estate column reappears in the energy bill. Nature always collects what affordability owes. Meanwhile, Halifax's nightlife glitters against this rural fatigue. Breweries, festivals, and the Navy's steady payroll have created a bubble of optimism that feels almost foreign within the same province. Yet crime tells another story. Late-night assaults in the downtown core have doubled in a decade, and the police describe a city growing faster than it can manage. Outside the glow, back rows witness subtler forms of decline: abandoned motels, vandalized barns, and small-town drug use that creeps in like fog. The province lives in two timelines at once. Still, Nova Scotia clings to an identity shaped by endurance. The sea both feeds and punishes. Communities rise from shipwrecks and storms. In Mahone Bay or Parsborough, families trace roots back centuries, bound by kinship and weather. The landscape is exquisite: coves, cliffs, orchards, but even beauty feels heavy when it's the only thing left unbroken. Affordability has become the new isolation. From a distance, the Maritimes look like a bargain hunter's paradise. Cheap homes, slow life, coastal calm. But zoom in and the pattern changes. Every province trades affordability for something else: stability, services, or youth. In Newfoundland, the bill was weather. In Prince Edward Island, it was silence. In New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, it's decay disguised as opportunity. And beyond the Maritimes, across the long, flat expanse of the prairies, another truth waits, where land stretches forever and people vanish into the wind. Beyond the Maritimes, the cold turns existential. Part 3. The Prairie Mirage. 5. Manitoba, the Frozen Bargain. If the Maritimes whisper of nostalgia, the prairies echo with space. Manitoba stretches flat and endless, where the sky feels larger than thought itself. Yet under that horizon lies a paradox: abundant land, affordable homes, and a chill that drains both body and ambition. With roughly 1.4 million residents, half in Winnipeg, Manitoba stands as the quiet middle of Canada, geographically stable but demographically fragile. The promise is simple: space to breathe, a house you can afford. The reality? That breath comes out as frost. The frozen bargain costs more than it saves. Winnipeg dominates the province's story, a city of murals, festivals, and crime reports that seem to contradict each other. Its art scene glows even through -30-degree winters. Neon galleries, live jazz, and multicultural markets. But step 2 blocks away from that light and boarded houses line silent streets. Winnipeg consistently ranks among Canada's top cities for violent crime, largely driven by poverty and drug use. Yet the housing prices tempt dreamers, around 350,000 CAD on average, far below the national median. But repairs, heating, and insurance quickly erase the savings. A cheap house can still bleed you dry. Beyond Winnipeg, the land stretches into stillness. Rural Manitoba has been emptying for decades. Towns like The Pass and Flin Flon face population losses so steep that grocery stores close before schools do. In the north, many communities rely entirely on air access. Winter roads appear for just a few months before melting back into swamp. The cost of milk or fruit can triple those in the south. Some residents heat with wood because diesel delivery costs more than the firewood itself. Isolation doesn't end when you leave the city, it deepens. By the way, each story takes hours of research and editing. Hit subscribe to keep them coming. The climate is relentless.
Blizzards sweep the plains with whiteout ferocity, cutting off highways for days. In 2022, Winnipeg endured a record 160 centimeters of snow. In the north, temperatures dropped below -40 degrees. Red River floods have destroyed entire neighborhoods, forcing evacuations that recur like ritual. Every few years, Manitoba rebuilds the same communities that nature keeps reclaiming. Insurance payouts climb, but rebuilding continues, a stubborn dialogue between human will and the elements. Here, resilience is the only infrastructure that never collapses. Economically, the province survives on a careful balance: manufacturing, agriculture, transport, and government work. But growth crawls. Wage increases lag behind inflation, and youth flight to Alberta and Ontario has become generational tradition. The provincial government touts stability, but stability feels like stagnation when opportunity never arrives. Small businesses open with enthusiasm and close quietly, leaving for-lease signs fluttering under the prairie wind. In a province of vast land, ambition runs out of road. Still, there's poetry in Manitoba's perseverance. Indigenous and Métis communities continue to anchor cultural identity through art and activism. Their festivals are some of the most vibrant in the country. In downtown Winnipeg, you might see a mural celebrating Louis Riel facing a boarded-up storefront, defiance and decay painted side by side. That coexistence defines Manitoba: proud, creative, and forever negotiating with hardship. Winter taxes your soul, but it also hardens your story. 6. Saskatchewan: endless sky, empty benches. If Manitoba is a test of endurance, Saskatchewan is an experiment in silence. With just 1.25 million people scattered across a province twice the size of the UK, it feels less like a place than a horizon. The motto once read "Land of Living Skies." Today it might be "Land of Leaving People." The promise of cheap acreage, quiet towns, and big skies hides an emptiness that has nothing to do with space. Endless sky, empty benches. The province's economy relies on wheat, potash, and uranium, all resources vulnerable to price swings. When global markets surge, Regina and Saskatoon buzz with optimism. When they crash, rural towns vanish from the census. Between 2016 and 2021, over 100 villages lost population. Some were dissolved entirely. The youth still head west to Alberta's oil fields, a migration so old it's practically cultural. For those who remain, life is steady but shrinking. Booms here echo, busts linger. Climate adds cruelty. Winters bite with wind chills near -45 degrees. Summers burn with dust and hail. In 2023, severe storms caused over $150 million in crop and property damage, a heavy blow to farmers already burdened by rising fuel and fertilizer costs. Rural insurance premiums climb yearly, and some homes simply go uninsured. When disaster strikes, communities rebuild together, but each year fewer return. The weather rewrites the map faster than planners can draw it. Saskatoon and Regina, the province's only real urban centers, offer pockets of vibrancy. Saskatoon's riverbank glitters with art festivals and cafes. Regina's universities and legislature keep a hum of progress alive. But outside the city limits, services thin dramatically. The nearest hospital might be 90 minutes away, police patrols even less frequent. Commutes stretch across endless plains, turning every job into a logistical puzzle. Gas prices alone devour the supposed advantage of rural affordability. Space doesn't mean opportunity. The social texture has changed too. Where once the local rank or church kept a town's heartbeat steady, closures have left silence in their place. Abandoned schools stand as monuments to migration. Even community halls, once the province's soul, host fewer weddings, more estate sales. Yet amid that emptiness, there's a stubborn pride, a belief that hardship itself is a heritage worth preserving. Farmers gather at auction yards not just to trade, but to remember. Tradition endures even when the town disappears. Economically, the paradox deepens. Saskatoon has flirted with becoming a tech hub, attracting small startups, but the scale remains modest. Potash exports keep the provincial GDP afloat, yet profits concentrate in corporate towers far from the fields. The wealth of the soil rarely stays in the soil. Rural education funding shrinks as enrollment drops, and housing, though cheap, often under $200,000, comes with storm damage, isolation, and resale uncertainty. Affordability without stability is just erosion in disguise. Still, Saskatoon captivates with its scale. Stand at dusk near Moose Jaw or Kindersley, and the horizon glows pink over a wheat sea so vast it feels eternal. That view seduces newcomers every year, until the first blizzard, the first power outage, the first hour-long drive for groceries. Then the dream clarifies into something colder and truer. You don't live in Saskatchewan, you endure it. And those who stay don't measure success by income, but by staying at all. Here, survival itself is an achievement. Beyond these plains lies something larger and stranger still. North of the wheat, beyond the lakes and forests, lies a province that dwarfs them all. Culturally rich yet geographically forbidding. Famous yet forgotten outside its cities. Quebec may hold a quarter of Canada's people, but most of its land belongs to silence. And north of all that emptiness lies something larger still.
Part 4. Beyond the Corridor. 7. Quebec, the giant province no one lives in. Maps lie beautifully. Quebec looks enormous, stretching from the American border to the Arctic Circle, covering almost 1/6 of Canada's landmass. Yet, outside the thin ribbon of the St. Lawrence River, the province is largely uninhabited, a kingdom of forests, lakes, and rock. Over 8.7 million people call Quebec home, but 80% of them live in or near Montreal and Quebec City. Beyond that corridor lies another world, vast, cold, and eerily silent. A giant province where most of the map is not for living. Head northeast and civilization dissolves quickly. The Gaspésie's coastal cliffs and tiny fishing villages feel closer to myth than modernity. The Côte Nord stretches for more than 1,200 kilometers with barely 90,000 residents scattered between the tundra and the tide. Roads end in gravel, and winter storms erase them entirely. Every community has its own survival math. A diesel generator, a snowplow, a doctor who flies in twice a month. Houses can sell for $100,000, but transporting groceries or fuel can cost nearly as much each year. Cheap land meets expensive distance. Further inland, the Abitibi and Saguenay regions tell another version of isolation. Born from mining and forestry booms, they thrived in the mid-20th century when railroads promised permanence. Today, automation and market swings have left them half-empty. Mines run with skeleton crews, pulp mills close without ceremony. Towns like Chapais or La Belle-sur-Quévillon hover between survival and memory. Real estate listings look tempting, large homes for $150,000, yet vacancy signs dominate. Wages stagnate while costs rise. Youth disappear toward the cities. The map stays full, the towns don't. Then there's Nunavik, Quebec's Arctic frontier, accessible only by air. Its 14 Inuit villages exist in a world of perpetual logistics, where every meal, tool, and medication arrives by plane or seasonal ship. A carton of milk can cost $12. Building materials arrive months late. Yet, amid the scarcity, communities remain fiercely alive. Language, art, and tradition forming an ecosystem of resilience. Their survival proves that habitation in the north is possible, just not profitable. The Arctic doesn't reward comfort, it rewards continuity. The landscape itself fights habitation. The Canadian Shield dominates everything. Ancient granite, thin soil, and tens of thousands of lakes that make road building a form of endurance sport. Maintaining infrastructure costs billions, and each new kilometer yields diminishing returns.
Ice storms snap power lines faster than they can be replaced. Freezing rain can paralyze cities for weeks. The 1998 ice storm left 3 million Quebecers without power, a trauma still recited as folklore. The message is clear: nature sets the rent. Every kilometer farther north doubles the cost of living. Yet, for all its hardships, Quebec radiates culture and pride. Even its smallest parishes pulse with French identity, preserved through festivals, food, and stubborn community. In villages like Kamouraska or Baie St. Paul, church bells ring over streets nearly empty of youth, echoing through time rather than distance. People stay not because it's easy, but because it's theirs. That collective endurance defines Quebec's soul, the belief that belonging is worth more than comfort. Heritage becomes a kind of shelter. Tourism paints a misleading glow. Summer brings motorcyclists, hikers, and campers chasing untouched wilderness. Cottages fill, rivers roar, and restaurants hum with French and English alike. But come December, silence returns. The cabins stand empty, roads glaze with ice, and the wilderness resumes ownership. Locals describe winter as 6 months of waiting. In many northern towns, snow removal and heating devour $4,000 or more per household annually, erasing any advantage of cheap housing. The price of silence is heat. Economically, Quebec beyond its corridor runs on extraction, hydroelectric dams, mining, logging, projects that enrich the province but rarely the locals. Workers rotate in and out on fly-in schedules, profits flow south. What remains are ghost infrastructures, roads built for vanished industries, power lines feeding cities hundreds of miles away. It's a province divided between energy producer and human consumer, between mapped potential and lived absence. Cheapness here measures emptiness, not opportunity. Even so, life clings stubbornly. Artists retreat to the Gaspésie for solitude. Young families seek the quiet of Bas Saint Laurent. Elders refuse to leave ancestral homes despite snowdrifts that bury their doors. There's beauty in the persistence, but also tragedy in the repetition. Each generation relearns the same truth. Cheap land doesn't buy belonging. Belonging costs everything. The cold teaches what economics forgets.